Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. You're tuned in to Leica Stories. Today we are in conversation with American portrait photographer Kurt Iswarienko. Kurt, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Of course, great to have you on. We'll just dive right into it. I want to know, because I know you do a lot in the cinema world. Where was your first love? Was it stills, or was it like a lot of us? We grew up watching movies. We fell in love with movies. Did it start with films?
Yeah, it started with films. I actually didn't really even know photography was a career path or option until late, quite late in the game, relatively speaking. I came out to California to LA to work in the movie business to do lighting because I thought I wanted to be a cinematographer. And this is in the days before digital. I took a still camera to set with me as a totally uh, I guess you could say either arrogant or ignorant, whichever one you want to assign to it. I was young and I was in my own head, so I took a still camera to set, figuring there's a great cinematographer lighting it, there's great actors being paid to be there, and I would pull them aside in between, takes every once in a while and take portraits of them as a way to learn how to expose film. That was it. There was no end game other than how the hell does this camera work? How does film get exposed? And it was in that process of working with a still camera and kind of putting all those pieces together of like, oh, I can do this and I can tell a whole story. So I fell in love with still photography by accident, just not. And I had my best friend to this day, my roommate at the time. He was heavily into photography and in that world, and very much encouraged me to to do that. When he, I would learn camera stuff from him after I got interested, that way. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach, but more means to an end to become a cinematographer.
Interesting. So you came on the movie set, but you were learning the still kind of thing. And being on the movie set, did that, that you would think it'd make you want to go more the cinema route, but the stills kind of took over. What was it about a single frame?
Yeah, I think it's that simple. I think it's a single frame. It's there's something extreme about that. There's something um kind of confining in a really good way for the a creative person. If there's so many in film, there's so many different directions you can go in, and there's so many other elements you have to kind of orchestrate. And again, pre-digital, the barrier to entry to film was monumental compared to
Mm.
nowadays, and the barrier to entry to still photography was still higher then with film than it is now, but it wasn't as seemingly insurmountable in my mind anyway. It was that idea that you could tell an entire story um, with just your two hands and your eye and your whatever interaction you conjure up between you and your subject. And that it was really that simple. And then in working in the movie business, I was young. I was 20 to 29 or so, and that was like that was almost a 10-year stretch where I did that, and I was gone all the time. I was just you're gone for 9 months, a year at a time. I did big movies, and so it's like an investment of your life, in terms of time and wear and tear, and what it does to friends and family being gone. And I was like, well, if I do this for a living, I'm going to be gone all the time. And still photography, much less impact. It's more of measured in days and weeks rather than months and years in terms of, I travel all the time, but I travel a week or two at a time, and then I'm back home, um, for however long until the next one. So there's that.
So, I mean, that's a great way to look at it. I've kind of the same thing has been for me where I've always had an interest in film and I'm lazy. So for me, it's kind of like that, that was my out was like, all right, well, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more resources, and being able to tell a story in a matter of frames is a lot more palatable. Now, there's
Yeah.
also this responsibility when telling the story in a frame. I want to focus specifically on the key art because I've always been super interested in key art. And it's like you're taking a select number of images and you have to kind of package everything that that production wants to say into an image or into a couple images. Can you talk about the decisions and the creative direction that go into a piece of key art?
Yeah, I think it's for me, it's one of the more fascinating niches in photography, and I've come to appreciate that over the years. I didn't even understand it at first. When I first got my first couple of opportunities, honestly, even the word key art doesn't conjure up any kind of meaning, I don't think. Not for me anyway. I was like, what the hell does that mean? I was never, I think for students of art history and for students of design, the words make more sense because it comes from that. But to an average, I thought I was a fashion photographer. A lot of people are going to laugh when they hear that, and they did at the time too. More stylists and fashion people used to laugh at me now, but I thought I was a fashion photographer because that's what was the rock stars of my generation were the big photographers were all fashion, Helmut Newton, uh, you know, Peter Lindbergh, you name them, everyone knows their names. So I wanted to be them, and I thought, so that's just what I called myself. And, so I kind of fell into portrait photography. This is kind of an important distinction in key art. Really, I'm not a key art photographer. I'm more of a portrait photographer. That's why in my bio it says that,
Mm.
because I think that's really what key art, the foundation of key art for a photographer comes from portraiture. It comes from taking, having a moment with an actor, or whoever it is, and getting into that story that they're telling. Understanding their character, understanding the arc of the character in the film or the show or whatever, understanding the message of the film, what the tone is, what the moral of the story is, so, in a very simple way. So there is, I'm running around here, but getting into like what does it mean to me today to be a key art photographer? I feel like it comes with a big responsibility to do the research and understand the characters, understand the story, understand all of the tonalities of the film, the sound of the film, the whatever, all the elements that make the film. That has to get synthesized into, in your word, a single frame, or a series of frames that represent the film or the story, and that's what's endlessly fascinating to me about it. That's why I've kind of um, specialized in that and kind of ended up there in this part of my career, is that there's no other aspect of photography that's more interesting. Um, I do a fair bit of advertising, and in the
Mhm.
advertising, traditional advertising, cars and liquor and the such. The projects that I get in those worlds, they're always asking for the key art thing. They want that. They're not coming to me as like a default, like that's our car guy. They want to do a car thing. They don't want the car thing. They want the cinematic,
Mm.
emotional, subject driven, narrative driven storytelling thing. And that, so you get a few passes on the merry-go-round there every couple of years, when they're into that, and it's great. I love collaborating like that because I know why I'm being hired. I know why I'm being brought to the table, and what the ask is. Um, but yeah, so if that does anything to answer your question.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting that, the cinema brought you in, and because a lot of people, when you look at really, really well-rounded and the photographers that really stand out, they usually come from the cinema world or had some background in the cinema world, or a lot of product photographers. A lot of great, photographers or portrait photographers started as product photographers. And what is that hinged upon? It's hinged upon understanding of light and
Hmm.
color. And for you, it's so much emotion evoked. So it makes sense. It's like when I look at your images, they do look like still frames from movies, and which I guess that's the idea. I mean, key art is kind of like a still version of a trailer. It's supposed to generate a feeling, an emotion that makes somebody want to feel that. But it stands out like the Shogun series. I looked at those images, and dude, I'm just like, I'm scrolling through them, and it's like the color and just the balance, the light, the play between contrast and light and dark. Where does the direction for that, like, how much do they put on your shoulders, and how much? Because it's easy to look at these products and these images when you've already seen the series and say, okay, obviously. But for those who haven't worked on a film, and they're working in the production of the advertising, imagery and video, stills, all that stuff, you don't see the final product. You're there a lot of times, or do you? When this art is being made, is this made as the film is being made? Is this made after? Where does this fall in the process?
Yeah, great question. Great insight. you're painting a real good picture of what it's really like. Most of the time, let's say 80 to 90% of the time, the key art shoot, the special, that's the other, they call it key art or special shoot. That's even more
Okay.
obscure. Special shoot happens during production. Oftentimes it's towards the end. I would say if there's a default, it's towards the end. So you're getting everyone when they really don't want to be there anymore most of the time. And the production's over schedule and out of money. And you're inserting like a special teams for a really quick operation to get what you need and get out. Sometimes it happens once production is done, very rarely, but sometimes. And then sometimes it happens completely disconnected from production. Like maybe there was an actor strike and the actors were down for a long time and you had to go back afterwards, or maybe it's before a project starts, but most of the time it's during production. And because of that, most of the time there is no final product yet. You're kind of um,
Mm,
you're going more off of what the marketing and creative teams have put together. Um, that they know the film and or the show much better than I do at any given point because they've been living with it, and they know the filmmakers and they know the producers and they know, they've invested the time, they've done meetings and gone on scouts and figured it all out, and then they've in turn given their ideas over to the various agencies that do the creative sketching and concepting. So there's, at any given time on any given project that I'm involved in, there could be upwards of four, five, six, seven agencies, creative agencies that are doing
wow.
concepts. And there could be anywhere from 25 to 50 to 100 concepts coming from each agency that are kind of thrown into the mix. Um, in consideration of this represents, there's all these iterations, and then the creative teams, that are, in charge of the shoots, they're distilling it all down and tweaking and making, changes. And by the time it gets to me, an enormous amount of time and effort and money has already been invested in what this is going to be. And so my job is to come in and pick up right there with them, understand the concepts that have made it to the final kind of iteration that's going to comprise of the shoot that we're going to do. And it's my job to work very closely with them. Not it's not me alone. It's an army of
Mhm.
people, and like I said, people who've been far more involved than I have up until that point. And when I come in, it's to interpret the ideas that they've decided they want to execute and figure out how to shepherd the budget and the process and the time that we have in the location that we have through to the end to make sure that the pieces that we come back with are going to be the ingredients that will work to then create the final product. That's the other unique thing about key art is that I'm, and I'll willingly, freely admit this, it's not a secret, but I think it's often misunderstood to people not in the inner circle of this kind of work, is that I don't do the retouching, in this kind. I do a lot of retouching. I do, for editorial, for regular advertising. I actually do. I'm sought after for my retouching in that world, but in the key art world, there's an army of other people that do that. These agencies have really talented, incredibly talented, graphic artists that are wizards at Photoshop and compositing and all of the various techniques creatively and technically that it takes to put these posters together. There's armies of people working on this stuff. So I have to deliver something that I'm not going to ultimately be manipulating. So it's like if I was a
Mm.
chef and I had a very successful restaurant, but all I did was go shopping for the ingredients and then drop them off and say, I leave it to you to make my dish, and it's not my dish, it's our dish, but it's like that's kind of the closest analogy I've come up with over the years of thinking about it. And in the early days, it was hard. It was I got a call one time. This is an example, a real world example that happened to me, that I found very valuable and very thankful that this happened. This is one of my very first key art jobs back in the very early days of Netflix, and it was for a show called I'm going to forget the name now. It's oh my God, it was a big show. I'll think of it in a second, but it was a big
Mhm.
show, and one agency was on it, and they were on the shoot with me, and the concept was very reportage, fluid camera, no tripod. The camera floats through the camera's all just like
Just
that's
like
hilarious. Just
it's
like
right
the
on
stupid.
cue.
I mean, we said this was going to happen. I got to keep my hands down. So let's see if it works to zoom back in. Come on, work with me, camera. Nope. Okay. Um, it was the camera was supposed to be moving the whole time, capturing fly on a wall kind of stuff, and it went great. It was awesome. Got a call maybe 2 months after the shoot from someone at a different agency, someone I've become very close with and good friends with and worked with a lot over the years. Very talented um, creative director and owner of an agency. Called me up, and I remember I was standing I was about to catch a touchdown pass from Larry Fitzgerald, then of the Cardinal, the Arizona Cardinals. He was a camera nut, and we were talking about cameras, and we were tossing the ball back and forth. I was shooting a Visa thing, and I get a phone call, and it's hello. He's like, all he said was, "Have you ever considered using a tripod?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's not a static shot in any of the footage." And I was like, he's like, "It's actually more like footage. It looks like film footage, but it's beautiful. But there's nothing I can make a comp with." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You weren't even on this job." He's like, "Well, I'm on it now, and I can't use any of this stuff." And I was like, "Jesus!" Like, and I was a lot younger and did not have much under my belt in this world, so I was like, I was terrified. Um, I said, "Oh my God!" Well, the concept was fluid camera, and I was like all choked up and nervous. And I said, I'd shot what the agency wanted me to shoot, and it looked everyone was happy. He's like, "Well, they're not on it anymore, and we're not happy." And I was like, "Oh." So the lesson was, I can get thrown under the bus, not intentionally, but just by virtue of things changing downstream or upstream, that I have no control or involvement in, and I can look like the one who messed it up. So it's that was a hard spot. That was
Mm,
unique. That doesn't happen so drastically, I don't think, but it was a good lesson in that you can be on the chopping block for reasons that have nothing to do with what you contributed. It can be, things change. So it kind of changed my overall outlook on the scope of what I'm supposed to put together, the attention to things, let's cover it, let's get plates. I know we're not, like the menu kind of widens, the shopping list, the
mm.
ingredient list widened at that point for me, and questions that I ask in pre-production meetings changed as a result of that. And it ultimately was a great lesson in how to um, curate the experience and make sure that it accounts for the unforeseeable as much as possible. So that's a big thing in key art is you want to so much money gets invested in these shoots, and the stakes are high. Time and resources are always limited, no matter how big the budget, and you have a great responsibility to deliver the most of what you can deliver within that framework. And I always take that seriously.
Wow, that is a great example because I think I always thought it was like a smaller group, like kind of like, hey, we're going to Kurt. We know what Kurt's going to give us, and Kurt kind of has most of the say. But it's kind of interesting and scary at the same time to see, you're working with a ton of different visions, and even though there might be 100 people and 100 ideas involved in it, how you execute, to use your analogy, it's like walking through the grocery store. Maybe I should grab these over here. I might
Hmm.
not need them, but they might
Yeah,
need them, 3 steps down the line. And
that's
so,
it.
so kind of what you're doing is because a lot of this stuff are most of it, I'm guessing, is shot on seamless or on plain backdrop. Are you studio shooting most of the key art?
It's yeah, great question because it's changed a lot over the years. I'd say when I first started, um, you know, it was more random. It was more like let's go to the location and get what we can get. Like a great example of that is I did The Counselor for Ridley Scott a number of years ago, and the brief was quite literally I went to Fox and met with the people in charge at the time, um, and they said we want you to go to Ridley's set and see what you can get. Just embed yourself. And I was like, does he know I'm coming? Like, has this been sanctioned? And like, just, yeah, yeah, it's all good. You go, get what you get, and come back. And total luck, coincidence, whatever, the divine intervention of the universe, the benevolent universe, a very good friend of mine happened to be the cinematographer of the of this movie.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I just got really lucky that I had an in that could not possibly have been conceived of or accounted for in any reasonable sense of that. So I got there and it was like introduction to Ridley, introduction to the crew, and and we were able to get great stuff and do great stuff, not on seamless. Just getting
Hmm.
pieces, grabbing the actors in between takes, and actually, to one of your earlier questions of what's the power of the still frame, I remember on that film towards the end, walking up a hill with Ridley, and he was like marching up the hill to the next set. And we stopped for a minute, and he looked behind us, and there's 100 people marching up behind him, and I'm standing there with him with a still camera because we're talking, and he's like, he's like, you're very lucky. You can tell a whole story with just this the camera. He's like, look at what I have to deal with, and we're looking back at all these people. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool for a
Wild.
legend to say something like that. But now going back to what's it like now. Most of the shoots are seamless, and when I say seamless, I don't actually mean seamless in terms of a 9 or 12 foot piece of paper that's up. That's like almost completely useless for the scale most of the time of what I'm doing.
Interesting.
They're just not big enough, and then they're made of paper, so they tear, and it's actually, in my opinion, a terrible atmosphere to put an actor into because it's autumn this curved sweeped thing. It's like, what is that even for? It's like it's kind of irrelevant. If for fashion, if you want that clean look in your final photo, great. But if you want a space to be able to move and work and put lights in the right places, it's completely useless, in my opinion. So I always put a at least a 20 by 20, gray fabric, usually day gray. That's my default favorite. So it's
Right.
amazing how many places don't have a day gray 20 by 20. Um, so it's oftentimes it's just bleached muslin and then I put steel deck. So you have a clean back and a clean floor, and then you have a beautiful big platform from which the talent can move and not be confined to this ridiculous little footprint of a seamless background. So, but by all intents and purposes, that is seamless. It's a negative space where you're shooting to a sketch that's going to get composited into some crazy background, with interior, exterior, otherworldly, whatever it is, and we light according to what will fit that world that it's going to go into.
As far as like mood and that's where is that what we're talking about here as far if you have something that's a an epic and it's like you want really really contrasty is that what you're talking about as far as the lighting is concerned? If it's
Yeah,
something like a softer, hey, we're doing a softer period piece that's going to be set in the early 1900s, we want very natural, airy. Is that the kind of direction we're talking about?
yeah, yeah. It's very specific always. You're And that's where the granularity of the selection process of who the photographer is going to be comes in. There are other granularity factors, but I'd say probably the main one is usually what's the look, like what's that nuanced thing that this person does that no one else can do quite the same. I work a lot with, I have over my whole career with FX, and they're kind of like I think I can safely say, I think in everyone's estimation, and especially in my own, they're kind of like the Super Bowl of key art. It doesn't really get bigger and better. I mean, there's as big and as good, perhaps. But in terms of like the overall perception in the industry, they're kind of like they win the prize for best of show most of the time. And they're the stuff we do with them is extremely specific and in a great way because you're not trying things out with them. You're getting something that is exactly what they've sketched, and but then you have to add the intangibles to that. It's like I want the sketch, but I want the life no one else could breathe into this. And
Mm.
those things only it comes from working together on set very closely and very deliberately. Kind of like the way, if you've ever read, and you should, if you haven't, you should read Van Halen's Brothers by Alex Van Halen. They go into detail about the recording process. And when I listen to that book and I listen to them talk about 1984 in the recording process, I was like, this feels like working with FX. Like it's like we want the best juice in all the land, and you're gonna, like we have to find it somehow. It's magic. It's magic, and we have to conjure it, and then we have to capture it, and then replicate it, and then we'll do it again and again and again. And that's what I love about working with them is that you're going for you have to believe in magic first and foremost, and then you have to have the confidence and the just enough screws loose to believe you can actually find it on demand every time, and usually with them at weeks at a time. So it's a
Mm.
really amazing process, and they're not alone. There are other great clients that I work with that are in the same very much in the same quest for excellence and magic and all that stuff. But yeah, to get back to the lighting thing, um, we have these. It can be anywhere from, let's just say, a minimum of three different looks.
Okay.
Let's say generically, just to paint a picture for people, let's just say that we want to cover things in a morning light outside, some kind of interior light, at night, and some kind of dramatic, ominous outdoor, bad weather kind of a light thing. Let's say those are the three lighting setups you want for that particular project. But oftentimes with the projects I'm doing, it's more like 7 or 8 or 9 different lighting setups. And it's for specific, beats in the creative deck that we're trying to hit. Um, my process is very different than everyone else's in this regard. I don't use strobe. I shoot with continuous lights, and with the advent of LEDs in the last few years, have LED technology has gotten stratospherically great. Like it's like the most to me. It's I mean, no offense, Leica, I love you, but the most interesting thing happening to me in photography is lighting, and that's what makes cameras much more interesting because choosing the camera that works with the lighting is we'll get to that, but lighting has gotten so exciting. So my lighting is all through controlled all remotely through an iPad with a dimmer board, operator. And I can have 8 or 9 different lighting setups ready to go at the push of a button. So I can in the same space, in the same 20 by 20 gray with a steel deck, I can have as many lighting setups as we need all ready to go at a moment's notice, and we can switch between them on a second by second basis, just like in one,
Wow.
two, three, So I can get a lot of variety and um, a lot of material very quickly without the actor even knowing that something has changed. The great thing about that is I can be on a roll getting the performance that we're looking for, that emotional moment that everyone's like, oh yeah, like you can hear it at Video Village. They're like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. And I can say to my dimmer guy, okay, go to the morning light in this thing. And no one even knows I changed it, but I'm getting the same performance for that other thing and then that other thing. And we can cycle through them without anybody even realizing we took the time to do it. So there's a lot of just a lot of mileage that we can get approaching it that way.
Mhm.
It makes it exciting because you can actually see what you're getting, et cetera, et cetera.
How many lights are you typically using on a shoot?
Um, well, I can tell you, I can be really nerdy if you want me to.
Go
I
for
have a
it.
traveling package that goes from place to place. Like wherever I shoot in the world, the package goes there first, on a separate, it gets drop shipped there basically. There are on my default regular package, there's 24 lights.
Damn.
And then if you do something bigger like Lord of the Rings or Shogun, for example, it's pretty much double. It's like 2 pallets. It fits on a pallet. That when you see you're in the airplane and you see them putting a pallet on the thing, you're like, what's that?
That's Kurt's
Chances
lighting
are
gear.
it's my lights. It looks more like a rock and roll tour than a photo shoot. But no, it sounds bigger than it is. It's a pallet's actually quite small. It's actually 48 by 40 by 62 inches high, so it's not that big. But I have small but mighty powerful LEDs. So it's like 24 units is the default package, the survival package that we can get you your average key art thing in 24 lights.
So most of us are only like 22, 23 lights off of the setup. We'll get there.
Exactly.
Get
You got a little catching up to do.
Exactly. I mean, it shows specifically in the Shogun photos. It's like there's that depth,
Mhm.
and like that's the stuff that you can't create. You can't take a one or two lights and build out the depth that you have in those images. And I think a lot of people underestimate the process and what goes into why you're using, you're not using 24 lights just to use 24 lights and have
No,
overkill. It's piecing it together, right?
yeah, and to be clear, it's not 24 lights for one shot. It's
Mhm.
excuse me, I said I wouldn't do this, but it's driving me crazy.
Go for
There
it.
we go. I don't want it to stay put. Um, it's 24 lights for the overall scope. It
For
could so it
everything you're
could be
doing.
like in the case of Shogun again, FX totally unique. We were by some act of the photo gods being very kind to us, we were able to have complete control of their all of their sets. This never happens. I mean, we sometimes you get one set, sometimes you get two sets, and when they're not there, and they remind you that you're not welcome, etc. But with Shogun, they they roll. It's like they shut down or something. I know they didn't. They were on location, but we got their entire every set they
No
have.
way.
So we shot the gallery. The gallery is another weird word. I still don't understand why they call it that. Key art is like the poster. Gallery is like the character art, the individual, giving each individual character their little moment. So the gallery for that, each character, and I think there were like 13 or 15 or 20 of them, got their own set. I mean, it was like we're shooting in the house that they live in the movie. We're shooting in the palace that they're the king of, or whatever it was. Um, so we had complete control of their set, including whatever lights they had rigged. So we had their dimmer board operator showing us looks, and then we were able, still photography and cinematography are still on the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the amount of light you need. Cinematography has gone, let's use as little light as possible or as low level light as possible. Still photography, you still need, no matter how good the camera, you still need to, they're still thirsty in terms of light. So we were able to augment with my lighting package and kind of work it into what they had and create these moments that, and we hadn't seen the show, hadn't seen any footage, just were going on vibe and, the overall impression of what that era was like. Um, and it was just amazing because we was like, carte blanche to do our best, at interpreting the show. I actually ran into the cinematographer like maybe a year later after I shot it. We were both at the same lighting house picking up lights that we'd bought. And he was like, "Oh, you shot the campaign." I was like, "Oh, you shot the show." Like, great job. It was
That's
really cool to
awesome.
meet him and talk to him. He's an awesome guy. Um, but that was a career highlight, that one, because we were able to get in, and I feel like that's probably the closest I've ever gotten to um being in the eye of the zeitgeist of the actual storytelling of the show, because we and Japanese actors have a very different approach. They're very serious and take it incredibly seriously. So when one of them was on set being photographed, all of the rest of them insisted on being there as a show of support.
Oh,
So you
wow,
had
that's
so you had
awesome.
this investment on the part of the talent that they were right there with us, like making sure they were doing their part so it was like this incredible collaboration that very thankful I had the opportunity to participate in that one.
That's super cool. As you were talking about that, and when you mentioned meeting the guy who shot it, I'm like, I'd be nervous as hell. Like, is my vision, is my everything I'm approaching going to match what the show ultimately looks like? I mean, is that difficult, Kurt? Like getting on the same page? Like you have to create something for something that hasn't, a lot of times been shot and edited and graded, and you have to kind of, is that
I
difficult or?
well, now you're scratching my ego part. Um,
It's
I
I'm
think
putting the pieces together in my head. I'm like, he's making it sound easy, but I'm like, I'd probably be
I
crapping
look at
myself.
yeah, no, that is a fair point, and you're right. And then I'm gonna call you next time I get stage fright. I'm gonna be like, "Why did you put that in my head? I never thought about that."
I'm sorry, you never
Um,
heard it.
no, here's the thing. I think it's kind of like when you ever heard somebody cover. Well, let's stick with Van Halen. Let's go there.
Go
Since
for it.
can you tell I just read the book? Um, their first single was not one of their own songs. Their first single was "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. Um, they knocked it out of the park. I mean, imagine releasing a famous song by a famous band that everybody loved, and no one even knows who you are yet. It's 1977, and you come out with "You Really Got Me," and it was a hit. So I think doing what I do is kind of like singing someone else's song, doing a cover in my own way. I'm
Interesting.
faithful to I do my homework ahead of time. I look at who the cinematographer is. Um, I don't do my homework alone. I get homework assignments as well from the client. They've done their homework. You have to understand everybody involved really wants to do the best to shine the best light on the show or the film or whatever it is, and they want to please the filmmakers. They want to faithfully render the story as well. So there's never we're never at odds. We're never trying to undermine or do something that doesn't serve the greater the greater good of the show, promoting it. We're in the promotion, we're in the marketing business.
Mm.
So we don't the last thing we want to do is something that's at odds with the look, feel, messaging, storytelling of the show itself. So I think there's this built-in reverence and um, kind of approach of serving what this is about. So I think it starts there. So it's not that far of a distance to travel for me to say I know what this is about visually because I've been schooled on it and I've done the time preparing for it, and then yeah, I want to put my twist on it. I want to secretly I want the pictures to look better than the show. I want it to be a little
Of
bit. you know
course.
but at the very least, I want it to represent. I want everyone to feel like I represented what it was about. So that
Mm.
doesn't come from me walking in like I know what I'm doing more than someone else. I try to be very deferential and sensitive to what the DNA of the thing to begin with. What's it about? And goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is like understanding um, the project from all possible inputs and angles, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're gathering all this intel basically. The
Yeah,
longer you're in the industry, you're getting to know people, you're getting to know people's styles. Obviously, you said you have your homework. So when you go into it, you kind of have an idea in your head, and you're a professional, you've been doing this. It's easier then to kind of assimilate your vision while still putting your twist on it with everything you have at your disposal.
exactly. And I think we haven't mentioned the camera yet, which is
I
great
was I was
because
gonna go there. I was like, we were having a love affair with the LEDs, which of course
I
they are
I
great now.
promised I would mention the camera in the first third, which I've failed at.
We that look, I'm gonna Leica. It's here. I didn't direct the convo well. Horrible director over here, but we're here now. How did Leica enter your stratosphere?
Well, I think what we've done is we've kind of laid down a basis of credibility for why the camera matters. If we just said from the get-go, Leica is great because it's great, you'd be saying the same thing everyone already knows. But I think, every project calls for its own thing, whether it's lighting, there has to be an angle. There's always a hook that you have to kind of identify and follow down the rabbit hole in order to get the goodies out, right? To make it what its unique thing. And when I use a camera, like I use the SL2 in this realm.
Okay.
The M series is great for all the reasons it's great, but it's as far as like a workhorse in the chaos of on set and the brutality of being there 12 hours a day shooting frame after frame and getting it in focus. The SL2 is really, like, in my estimation, I haven't had a camera I've enjoyed using more, because it's much less camera. It's mostly it's lens, really. The camera's not in your way. Cameras get in the way. Like, let's be honest. No, does anyone really like the camera? I mean, I never did. I always liked what the camera does. I get into lens. I'm a glass man. I like lenses.
Totally.
I like this. The sound of the picture comes from the lens, not the camera. The camera is a faithful recording device, and some can be pleasurable to use, and some can be a nightmare to use. The thing about the SL2 is that there's no distractions. There's nothing unnecessary. It's beautifully built, simple, got the controls that you need. Doesn't have any of the stuff that doesn't no one actually uses. Menu system is easy to navigate. Um, and the lens, I'm a Summicron guy,
Okay.
specifically. I like um, the way that they're hand polished, and the micro contrast is it's sharper in the middle and it fades away towards the edges. It has this three-dimensional um, medium format-esque effect that is just stunningly beautiful. I I'll give you an example. I was just I don't use the same camera all the time. I use different cameras for different reasons, and I like everyone, I go through phases of using some cameras more than others at certain times for different reasons. But in general, a staple is always the SL2 for me, and the SL3 when I get my hands on it. I'm late to the party there. I'm just
We'll get you
stuck
caught
with
up.
I've stuck with this magic formula that's worked for me. Um, I just did a project recently with FX, and it's a project that I wasn't the first one to shoot it. It's someone else had shot it in previous seasons, and a look had been established. And the everything's the same actors, the same sets, the same everything. So the last thing I wanted to do was to try to replicate what had already been done, because if that was the case, they would be using the person that already did that, right? So I felt a very specific responsibility to figure out what what's going to be the hook. And I said to myself, it's not really going to be the lighting. I mean, the lighting is important. I'm going to have to do my thing, but I'm not going to stamp this with my stamp through lighting. This lighting is going to have to be adequate and great and whatever. But the wow factor is going to come from somewhere else. So I took every camera that I've ever used to the to that scout and pre-light, and I said, may the best little soldier win. And really, I didn't go in with a strong sense of I was like, the sets are specific and simple and could be very boring with the wrong lens and camera combo, right? So it was just instantly obvious. I tried the same frame with every camera I took, and when the Summicron SL2 combo went up, it was like, you know, it
That's
was
it.
like boom. Whatever, whatever stupid hand gesture people do when things are great. It was like we did that. Um, and it was like it became so pleasurable to do this job that I was actually a little nervous about. Nervous because someone else had established the look and feel, and it was like everything was already locked in place from previous seasons. So I was like, I have to make my mark somehow. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, there it is. And then that also gave me the freedom to experiment with lighting a little bit, push the lighting without putting the pressure of the look having to come from the lighting. It was like the lens already has it. Like and then what I mean by that is the way in this space, the way it kind of carved out the talent and wrapped the space around them in this unpredictable. You couldn't have known it was going to look that way ahead of time just because of how specific the environment was. But once I saw it, I was like, okay, now I know I can go into any corner of this place and I can get this look. And that was very reinvigorating on what's special about the Leica stuff. Um, and then I was on another job right before that, and this kind of gets into like this is Leica has a unique niche in the hearts and minds of people at large. On set in the world. Um, Shooting it on stage against the seamless I've already described, and it was a lot of action stuff, but like specific action, not like athletic running action, but like specific body, movements and stuff. And this person came up to me when we finished the shot, and I didn't know who she was. She was it was in Australia, and she didn't identify herself. She looked like maybe she was in the wardrobe department or something, but she just came up and she's like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Specifically, why did you pick that camera to do this shoot with?" And I was like, at first I was like, "Well, who are you? What are you asking me? Like, what do you do? Why did you wear that? Where did you wear those shoes today?" But then I was like, okay, I thought first, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to actually explain myself. So I said, it's like the combination of I can handle the action, but then it does this magical thing I can't explain. And I was like, look, and I showed her on the screen, and she was like, huh, thanks, that's really cool. And then she walked away. Um, so and it was just like I don't know that she would have, I don't know if anyone would have, if it was a Nikon or I don't know, some other camera would have been like, hey, why'd you pick that camera? It's like there's a thing about there's this
It's like
magnetic
mystique.
attraction, yeah, this mystique, and then actors almost always appreciate that you have a Leica. They're like, oh, Leica. It's like an automatic conversation starter or enabler or icebreaker, whatever you want to call it. So it's just kind of I was shooting Lando Norris, the Formula One driver, and I was trying out the Q series stuff. I'd never used it before, and I wanted something. We were going very run in hotel rooms in London, and very just no footprint, so I wanted the camera to be equally small and innocuous. And I walked in, and he walks in the room, he sees, like, he's like, I shoot with that camera. He's like, he got the idea for me. He's like, good taste, so it was like automatic, like, you know we're okay, like
It
we
kind
gotta
of
like
sets the tone, right?
it,
Like
it
this
really
guy
does.
knows what he's doing. He appreciates a good camera,
Yeah,
as do I.
yeah. So in my case, I can say, I'm not doing it because of that. It's like,
Mhm.
it's just, that's a pleasant byproduct side effect of the real reason I'm using the camera is because it gives me, this thing I can't get any other way, really,
Mhm.
when I choose to use it. So,
Yeah, great.
well,
Great chance to. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in case it's not obvious, Shogun was shot. Everything, all the images that we've shared were shot on Leica, but Shogun in particular, that was another one that wouldn't have looked. We did try other cameras in the pre-light, and the magic came with the Summicron SL2 combo and the lighting. But
Interesting.
yeah,
That kind of makes sense because there is just something, and it's like every person we have on, it's like that talks about Leica. There's just a Leica look. It's
yeah,
just something to it that just has an. It's like another depth and dimension of a look. We're gonna get into some of these images now.
sure.
And Kurt, feel free on any of these if you have any, anything to say, any backstory, any notes on any of these.
Yeah, that's Pink, otherwise known as Alicia. That was for her record cover, a couple years ago. Um, Shot at her property in Santa Ynez, and just knew it was gonna. We wanted it to be run and gun, no lighting, just follow her around in natural light. So it was a no brainer, easy to walk around with, and has a way of wrapping natural light around the subject in a way that feels elevated and not sterile. That's the other thing, is like so many cameras are sterile, and the color profile is kind of weirdly magenta and green, and you're like, why is that the default? The Leica has this natural skin tonality that's really beautiful, especially with natural light. Just kind of, it's very filmic in my opinion, and that's partially owing to the lenses, but there's something in the voodoo of the sensor that you guys are doing that I admittedly, I don't know anything about the sensor. I should know more. As much of a nerd as I am, I should know more. And I put all my nerdiness into the lenses, but there is something magic about the sensor.
There is like, and in this one, if it's like if you look at on just the entire left side of her, that on a lot of cameras, you're not going to get such a rich, like you said it perfectly, like the light almost just like wraps around and envelops, and the way it handles, it's the light, the way it handles light in the areas that aren't normally well lit
Exactly.
or handled well, that really makes it rise above.
It's true. There is there's another camera I shoot with a lot. That's it's a mirrorless medium format camera. It's great for certain things, but you put, like, if you like default into a studio, like against a gray seamless, and that light, it can look like there's just no end to the abyss on that other camera of how much light you have to pump into the shadows to make it feel not totally locked up.
Mhm.
Same with the Leica. There's just this, like, I don't know, there's just sort of this presence in the shadows that's not only technically good, but it's also it's got the intangible thing of like, why does that look good where this other one actually looks terrible? and I don't have to do anything um, to that dark area with the Leica because it looks great. It's like you embrace it. It's like a film stock when certain film stocks fell off into the shadow, and that's what you wanted because it looked nice. There's a quality to the Leica sensor that feels very similar to that to me.
Yeah, definitely. Here is this the Shogun key art we were talking about.
Yeah. What else can you say really?
So good.
I love what they did with the images as well. There's so many layers going on. There's so much attention to detail historically and with just design, with typography, with calligraphy, with you know, the whole thing is like definitely way too lucky to have done that one.
Yeah, and it's such there's such an art to it. It's so easy to make art like this look so bad.
Yeah.
Like design in and of itself, and like you said, um, you have to do your part, but then they have to do their part as well. And it's such a marriage of a ton of ideas and different creative visions and execution.
The level of knowledge and study and just art history and design history and passion that is that organization, that everyone, all the individuals that are actually physically at FX, and then all of the agencies that are working on this stuff. Like you've got like thousands of years of experience in all the people that worked on that. It's got to be thousands of years of experience. It's great. It's so impressive. At least, if not thousands, definitely hundreds and hundreds. Because I'm just remembering each of them showing me the inspiration for different aspects of this, and then knowing that there's like probably 20 people at each agency that are all working on these different concepts, and you're just like it's really
Wild.
impressive. And this is the Lando Norris, the Leica user Lando Norris. No lighting, just him and I in a hotel room perceived to be his, but it wasn't. It was just the rented hotel room for the day. Um, and again, just natural light. It was intentionally natural light, and maybe a little bit of bounce, but like we just wanted this sort of cinematic reportage, kind of thing, and the Q was the Q. I think that was the Q3. It was one of the two
Really?
Qs. Just snapping away and very simple.
And this is what we were talking about on that other image. I think this is probably an even better example of it where it just has that real look. And I think that's what, when you look at the Leica images, it's this challenging light. It's like you have it backlit, window
Yeah.
light. He's facing away from it. You don't have to really have much bounce even. Like it's
Mm-mm.
just a natural. It looks like if you were sitting there in a room with him, this is what it would actually look like if you were there and a
Yeah.
photo wasn't taken. You and it's that just the way it resolves in the shadows and when you don't have direct light, it's just beautiful. This is on any other camera, you'd have to, bump your shadows back up. And
Yeah.
then at that point you kind of lose that real feeling and it looks processed. Your brain says, wait, this light shouldn't be that bright.
It's a good point. Um, I have, like I said earlier, I do retouching on my own stuff. I retouched this. Actually, I should change my nomenclature. The kids these days call retouching editing. I came up calling it retouching. I did the post on these images. I find that when I work with the Leica file, I don't, if I try to do too much to it, it doesn't feel right. It looks so good out of the box. It so faithfully captures the essence of this time and place that when you try to, like you said, bump the shadows or play with the contrast, it kind of takes it in a fake looking direction. And whereas other cameras, you can't, you have to manipulate it because it just doesn't, you have to find a look.
Mm.
And that can be a real struggle. I have to remind myself when I'm working on images I shot with the Leica, I don't have to try so hard. I don't have to do any kind of business, to get it to feel like one of my pictures. It just kind of comes through.
Kurt, I gotta say, processing, editing, whatever people want to call it, retouching, that's where a lot of good pictures go to die. And your post processing is so damn good. Like everything, it's just It's on. I would have thought you had a team of retouchers. So bravo to you, because that's I've seen so many good images, and it's like, why would you do that? You, you had such a
Yeah.
great canvas to work with, and you ruined it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't, to be clear, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Um, a lot of the stuff I didn't do the post on, like this, for example, I
Hmm.
didn't have anything to do with that post wise. But the stuff, the editorial stuff and the non-poster stuff, most likely it's me. So thank you for saying that.
Yes, and we
Appreciate that.
dropped his website there. You guys have to go. I was telling Kurt before we went live. I was like, man, I sat there and I was like, I made our entire team go through your entire website. I think we went through like every single image, every single folder. It's
That's
just
cool.
beautiful, and it's like, yeah, you have such a great style, but it's varied, but it's all you. And yeah, outside of the key art, you're the processing. It's so good. It's so restrained. It's every picture has what it needs to really sell that evocation of feeling, like you really feel the images.
Thanks. That's the idea. I think feeling is a good word for it because I want them to have that sort of emotional response, to that's where the story comes from emotion. So, and I think also just natural continuous light helps me, find that nuance. Strobe has its place, and strobe can be very beautiful in the right hands. But for me, finding that like the precise little nuanced moment, definitely the layers of that come from continuous lighting.
Mm.
This is a good example of having access to their set. This is a massive set interior in Vancouver, um, and it's all real. That's all in camera. There's nothing has been composited there. That's the actual frame, and I would venture to say very little was done in post. It's looks exactly like what I remember coming out of
Mm.
the camera. This is not one I did the post on. This is done by some other person who did a very good job, in my opinion.
Totally. This
Very
entire
good.
set. I mean, all
That's
these
a full
images.
set. Yeah. That's inside. Background's real. It's,
Oh wow.
yeah.
And what was the light here? 'Cause it's like on the first one, I'm thinking it's like, all right, it'd be easy to get in there with like a smaller light source, but now we see it kind of pulled back, and it's like, okay, kind of changes the way you see it.
Yeah. It was a big, I would say it's probably 40 by 30 softbox that was on a kind of motors, like rock and roll truss motors. So it could be aimed like a light. So, angled, at 45 or whatever degree down. So it was probably a good 200 feet away or something up in the rafters and, just very gigantic light. And I think we augmented, just out of frame there, it was probably uh, like a big Fresnel, probably like a Felix Q10, was off to the left, kind of sharpening up the edge of, kind of continuing that soft but punchy, you know, twilight kind of light. But then kind of edging her out of the background ever so slightly. And
So
also kind of matching, you see the light that's on the tiles in the frame left.
yes,
So it's like that's coming from the big light up in the sky, and then we were just sort of continuing that onto her with my light.
interesting. So I got to get a 30 by 40 foot softbox. Got it.
Yeah, it's super easy. Just go big.
Right down to the corner store. I'm sure they have one.
Yeah, I did I'll tell a self-effacing story. I did the Santa Fe workshops a couple years back. Have you heard of those? The
Yeah.
ones that,
Yep.
yeah. And mine was, cinematic portrait lighting was, I think they called it. And I took a whole truck full of lights at my own expense, from Hollywood. I had my assistant drive it out and brought my digital tech and my assistant at my own expense and paid for them to be there for the week because they wanted to see how I did my, like, what's your process? So I was like, well, I can't come here by myself and pretend, do show and tell. So I was like, let me bring like some representation of what I do. And It went really great. I had so much fun, had really talented students. They were all awesome. And it was like a totally different, cool experience to spend a week talking for the first half of the morning and then reviewing pictures that they shot based on the talk, that afternoon and doing it day in and day out. Totally terrifying, but fun. And then they ask the students to grade the professor at the end and anonymously. And as if you don't know exactly how each of them speak and write at the end of the week, you're like, oh, that's him, that's her, that's Elia. And they like a bunch of them said the same thing, like it was great, but none of us are ever gonna you know, use the lights you use. So it would have been great for you to show us your process in a more of a dumbed down way. And I was like, shit, I should have made it easy on myself. But I mean, it was all in good fun. They totally appreciated it all. But it was just funny that I went through the effort, and they're like, hey, we're never gonna have these lights. So um, anyway, speaking of keeping it simple, this one is deceptively simple. This is just a couple of handheld tubes and maybe one splash of light on the wall, but it's really just two different handheld tubes in the right place and then the right camera and lens. So very, very simple, very fast, very fun way to shoot. I do that a lot with handheld tubes.
I was gonna say I saw a video of you using you had just the one tube, and I see the catch lights here, obviously, but it really is. It's that simple. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's just you need good light, good vision. Here we go, another angle on this.
Yeah, this is a gallery shot, an example of a gallery shot where it's her character getting, that moment for us to kind of capture a moment of that. It's meant to feel like it's from the show,
Mm.
but a little bit elevated. So we just we had maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 different cast members for this one, and we had access to their sets. And this was just a little return wall outside one of their main sets that we just splashed the light on, and it's got a great mood. Puts you kind of anchors you in the world of the show, and it's just a great psychological close up, I think.
Mm. How much time do you generally have when you're shooting these?
It's it varies, but I would um default and say anywhere between 12 to 45 minutes.
Okay.
It de- and that's AD talk, assistant director talk. Um, Generally, it's like about a half an hour.
Okay.
Generally, but it varies from 10 to 12 minutes on the low end to 45 minutes on the at the very most.
Okay. Okay. One final image in here. I love this one.
That's again, that's an use being able to use their set, have control over it, and then also bring our own lighting in to make it photographically worthy, right? Um, Clive Owen, one of the best. Shot him a few times. He's amazing. And yeah, we what can I say? We smoked it up. We put a big spotlight in the roof, and then we hit him with a nice, I think, a nice, probably a Fresnel from the side, and there you have it.
Although you make it sound so easy, Kurt. It's like I'd be sitting here beating my head.
Hmm.
It's like, like I'd said before, I all of our viewers, I advise you to go take a look through Kurt's body work. It's just amazing. And for me, I think that's what's so impressive is the ability to do so many different styles. But again, they all have your stamp on there. And I think a lot of us out there, we suffer from a lack of creativity, myself included. It's like I wouldn't know what the hell to do. You give me the best actor in the world, you give me an entire crew, but it's like that really where do we draw the inspiration? For you, where's your main source of inspiration when you're trying to do something different or not just stick to the same recipe?
Oh man, that's a good question. I might not even know the answer to that question.
To be continued.
I guess the answer would be there's a lot of things I wish I was a lot better at. Because there's easier ways to make a living. There's less destructive ways to, I don't know, like I guess it's the thing that just makes the most sense to me in a natural way. I feel fortunate that I got a gift that lets me practice that gift as a vocation. But I guess I look at painting. I love art. So I try to and I love music. So I'm probably most inspired by music. I especially
Interesting.
early on when I was finding my look and my stamp. I knew I wanted to stand out for something. I didn't know what form that would take. So music was kind of like I wanted to my look to have a sound to it, that was identifiable to people that, like uh if you certain musical acts, you just know from the first note that it's them. Um and I wanted my pictures to have that effect when people see them. Like, oh, that's something he shot. Because that's I think ultimately why you get hired on a long term when you have a career and you're known for something, it's because you're delivering a kind of experience that's in a way predictable, or I don't know, predictable sounds like a bad connotation, but like, it's like it's reliable, solid. Like, oh, we're not going to get something we're not expecting from this artist if we hire them. But then, I never try to do the same thing again. I try to always push. I try to learn from what I did last time. I do get very inspired by equipment and by um, I'm probably unique in that there's a lot of photographers that don't know anything about lighting. A lot of them, a lot of my contemporaries, hire people to do lighting for them. Don't understand that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. It would be like having a pilot who doesn't actually fly the airplane. It'd be like, what? The pilot has a pilot? What? Like, well, that's the pilot. The pilot's not the pilot. To me, that's kind of what it is. And I say that like I don't care who hears that because it's to me it's that's my truth, right? I know lighting is one of the things that makes me feel secure and comfortable. And like when I started, I didn't know anything else. I came from lighting. I came from film lighting. I had no idea what good hair was. I still don't. I had no idea what good makeup was. Style like it's funny, like stylists in the beginning when I thought I was a fashion photographer, they would come in with like mood boards and ask me if I wanted to see the clothes, and I'm like, I don't, I don't even know what that means. And now I
You
do.
tell me.
Yeah, you tell me what the hair is supposed to look like. I'm just, I do the lighting and I'll work with the talent. But um, so yeah, lighting just became what it always was, but it's still like I draw my own lighting diagrams out every time I get, and I, try to figure out on the scale that we do it, it has to become um, almost philosophical because it's too big. It's too big of a space to make up on the day. You have to
Hmm.
order equipment. You have to account for the size of it, and you have to do a little bit of math and figure out, well, if I put the light there, it's going to be not bright enough by the time. So you have to kind of be able to draw it and anticipate what it's going to look like. And then I love that process of seeing how that comes together and how it plays out for real once you've done that homework, and then refining that, figuring out what to do to make it better and easier next time, and also slightly different because I just don't like doing the same thing twice. I like to tweak it and make it better. It's like cooking, like you're never quite the best. I don't know about you if you cook, but the best meals I've ever
Course.
cooked, it always happens when I'm by myself. I was like, I want to do it for people. But
Yes,
sometime,
you know what you like. You can experiment a little. I don't have to worry if someone's not gonna. Oh, I don't like what you did this time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Lighting is like that. I kind of like, and you have to do it on demand. That's the thing. That's the if I really stopped and thought about that, like it's kind of like live performance. If you go to see a band, they have to be great in front of you, in front of your very eyes. Like they have to be great. With this key art kind of thing, you have to be able to deliver. You have to set it up right, but then you have to be able to perform. To a certain extent, it's a performance. The performance really it's about getting a result. You have to be able to get everything that they're expecting and the intangible extra, whatever that is. So
Right.
that's the goal every time is to be able to um, deliver and then exceed expectations and then hopefully do something innovative that you can, build on for the next one.
I love that. Well, Kurt, this was a great conversation. Again, beautiful body of work, and you helped demystify the world of key art for selfishly me because look, everybody, I was in this for myself. No, I'm wildly interested in key art, but no, for a lot of our viewers out there, it's a world that we don't often get a first person perspective of. So thank you for that. Any upcoming projects or exhibitions, anything you have going on?
I just finished a big run for this. The first part of this year was incredibly busy with travel, and so I'm currently you're catching me this in a very decompressed, catching my breath kind of a moment.
Okay.
There's some stuff coming up. It's more key art. Yeah, there's nothing. It's actually it's really boring. Nothing. I'm actually taking some time right now to
You're enjoying it. It's like a nice creative lull.
yeah, I'm having some cases built. To this is so boring. But I'm going to tell you. The idea of the palette, 48 by 40 by 62, the put maximizing the interior space of that physical constraint. So I'm having these cases built that hopefully will accomplish that. So it'll make shipping the stuff that much more efficient. And so I'm really like nerding out on my technical process right now. Taking a break from the creative artsy fartsy stuff and doing some technical stuff to balance the brain. Can't go all artistic all the time. You'll go
I
crazy.
love it. You're living in the future, man. It's like we're over here worrying about, our next camera. Kurt's like, nah, I'm on my next palette.
I'm a palette. I'm in the palette zone right now. And like everything, it takes longer and costs more than you think. So I'm exercising patience and restraint in accepting that.
There you go, little by little. Well,
But
Kurt,
I do want to get my hands on the SL3 because here's a question I have. Here's something I don't know. I'm curious about. You know, the SL2 and the Summicrons are literally peanut butter and jelly. It's like the perfect ratio. It's like a cheeseburger with just the right number of patties and it's perfect. I'm wondering if it's a full size, it's the same size sensor, but it's got more megapixels. And so if something's got to give, unless, or maybe not, maybe there is some voodoo in there that um, is special. So I'm excited to test that to find out if the lighting and the magic sauce of that I'm so used to and reliant upon is going to be the same or better, or if it's going to be different. And I'm curious about that. I don't have an answer because I haven't delved into that, but that's creatively one of my and technically one of my next endeavors is to figure that out.
unlock the mystery and find out if it's the same. Now,
Yeah,
we'll have to stay tuned and find out how it's stacked up and see if it
that's right.
because it is. I think you kind of harped on for a minute the importance of the lenses, which I love that because people don't. It's like don't care about the bodies. The glass is where it's at, and there's
This
that
sort.
chemistry between a system and the lenses that a lot of that stuff gets lost in the mix. I think when people argue online about the gear, they're having the wrong arguments. They're having the wrong conversations. And it really is like this chemistry. And when you find that really good setup, there's a reason why photographers, hands down, they know, hey, this is my go-to. This creates magic right here.
It's so true. I would, my dream, I actually had this dream a few years back. I wanted to build my own camera, and I talked to some well-known players in the arena, and they were like, "Oh, so you want to build a camera, do you? Like, how many millions do you have in the bank?" And it was like it. This is I was younger and more lofty aspirationally, but it would be like I would love to put my 2 cents in on what's important in the camera versus the lens. To your point, because I think it is you're talking about the wrong. Well, want little in the way as possible in the camera. There's really only the cameras are simple. It's ASA, shutter speed, and f-stop, and then some autofocus tracking stuff is nice, but it's not. It's kind of like you only need to shoot so fast. That's the other thing.
Mm.
Um, there's this obsession with speed that's absolutely um, nonsensical.
Like, why do we
And
need 400 frames per second?
yeah, that you don't. It's the whole spray and pray thing.
Yeah.
It's real. That's a real problem because there's a point at which you can't possibly be getting the performance. You're just hoping for something to happen. And I think that's important for people to remember is that just because you can go fast doesn't mean you should. That's a thing from flying is one of my hobbies. And a big thing in flying is you don't have just because the airplane can go fast doesn't mean you have to. You can slow it down, and slowing it down could save your life. I always apply that to photography. Like we don't have to shoot fast, and sometimes it's better to not because you're missing so many things, that are flying by. Going too slow is a problem as well. You miss a lot of things, but there is a sweet spot, and that's one thing that works really well with Leica is that you're not you don't have either problem too slow, too fast. It's like the emphasis is on the right thing, I think there.
There we go. Perfect way to close this out. Kurt, ton of experience, and we thank you for letting us in on that and giving us a little peek into your world. Of course, beautiful work. We're going to drop Kurt's website and Instagram in there for the YouTube live viewers for you guys to check that out. But a huge thank you to, of course, Kurt, the entire team over at Leica, and to all of our viewers out there. Another edition of Leica Stories and the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Thank you.